Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. Will we sacrifice CX going forward as companies struggle to stay open and so much need to create revenue? Definitely something to ponder considering the coronavirus pandemic. But what about the revenue leaks you already have that could be plugged today and that could improve experience? Quite simply, is customer experience part of your growth strategy? Jessica Noble is the founder and CEO of Magnetic Experiences, whose focus is on helping leaders boost profitability while elevating experiences for customers and employees. And on this episode, we'll discuss customer experience, plugging leaks to increase revenue, COVID-19, and all those communications you've got regarding how much brands care, the airlines, hotels, and insurance, panic buying of Fruit Loops, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a CX Magnetic CEO with a magnetic and experienced shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your career and your story to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I am in the customer experience sphere and kind of landed into it on accident back in maybe 2002 when I worked for Nationwide Insurance. They recruited me to lead a big agent experience redesign program. And one of the reasons they recruited me is I was in program management. I wouldn't have known what customer experience was if someone had told me. But I loved running that program. And really what we did was on instinct. We didn't know about customer experience disciplines or whatnot. After 4 years, I left that, got into consulting. And then one day my boss came to me and said, we need to start a customer experience practice. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, he knows I love new and I love a challenge. And so I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but I will go figure it out. And sure enough, that's where I saw the intersection of the things we've been doing at Nationwide. And then this entire discipline that had sprung up, this career, and was quite shocked and took the deep dive from there and have been loving it ever since.
So you said you were doing an agency redesign. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so Nationwide, they have agents that don't work for them directly but can sell their policies.
Yeah.
And they wanted a rate, quote, and issuance system where folks could go in. Remember, this is back in 2002, where folks could go in and actually provide quotes to their end customers that were underwritten by Nationwide and be able to do that all online. And at the time, they had a couple of piecemeal systems where they could do some rating, but they could not rate, quote, and issue all in the same system for commercial and personal lines of business. So we designed that whole system. And really, the rollout was a large part of the experience because it really banks on adoption when these people can sell anybody's business and they have to choose to sell yours.
So in today's world, do you run into agency redesigns, and are you having to help align the experience across all the different agencies that work with a lot of these large brands?
Yeah, in some cases, I do less work with insurance companies. I've worked with a few smaller
Yeah.
ones, but it is absolutely
Well, let me
where
give you
we
an
have gone.
example. Large
Yeah.
company, not insurance, could be any
Oh,
brand,
yeah.
is typically going to work with 10, 15 different agencies if they're a $1 billion plus type firm. And so,
Yep.
a lot of time that sort of setup often creates a little chaos, if you will, within the customer experience and trying to align that messaging and brand messaging and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah. So I'm glad you reframed that. I have definitely helped companies with that. And usually what they bring me in for is something related to efficiencies of scale, productivity,
Sure.
and less about customer experience. So we had a client maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they had 40 different sales teams. They sold a number of different hardware products, and each of the products had their own sales team. And they had a new CIO, and he said, I can't imagine that what they do is that different across the teams, but the individual teams were certain that they did. They
Mm-hmm.
were very unique. They were a snowflake. And so we went in there, a conference room that was too small and had no windows. And I won't say where it was, but it was freezing cold in January and it was miserable. But when we were meeting with each sales team, about 3, 4, 5 of these interviews into 40, I mean, they all do the exact same thing. They might talk about it differently. They have different systems and whatnot. And so when we put together the roadmap for them and the ultimate proposed solution. It was about making that experience consistent for clients and standardizing on systems. But one of the greatest benefits they ended up getting was now they could have team members move to different sales teams based on need and capacity without having to train them as if they were a new employee.
So, one of the things that I think about a lot with customer experience is that I think very often it still falls on deaf ears. Maybe the marketing team gets it. Your CEO, if he or she is smart, they'll definitely get it. But how that translates back to financials and the ROI of it, I think, is where a lot of that has to be explained better to the CFO in order to enact a lot of this. But I think one of the things that's interesting is you tackle reasons why businesses are losing money despite revenue growth. Kind of unpack a little bit,
Mhm.
sort of the overview about that as how you approach CX as part of plugging a leak in revenue.
Yeah. So when I look at customer experience, one of the number one things that I noticed is that the language that customer experience practitioners, including myself, often use is not what we would tell someone else to use. We're not speaking in the language that's most meaningful to the person we're talking to,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the first things we coach our clients to do is speak in a way that your customers can understand you, that's meaningful to them. And we speak in this all these, fancy words, whether it's consulting ease, customer experience ease. We talk about journey maps and scores and NPS. And that doesn't resonate. That's not in people's everyday language. And so the way that I tackle this, and customer experience is at the core of my heart, but as you mentioned, is to look at where are the money leaks and how can we boost profitability. My heart and my sweet spot is with the small and mid-sized businesses that are growing really quickly, and they were born out of a desire to be customer centric. They had customer centricity in their DNA. They set out to design great experiences, and they likely started that way. But experiences morph over time, especially as you grow. And so you end up with these disjointed landscapes of processes, technologies, et cetera, and it's eroded.
Mm-hmm.
And so the experience has eroded as well. But by coming at it from the productivity and the money leak side, the majority of the inefficiencies, the lack of productivities, the lack of automation, whatever that may be, is being felt by the client. So whether you come in from the back or you come in from the front, you're going to identify a very similar set of opportunities.
This has got to make sense to 99.9% of the people you speak with, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So, why do you think they aren't recognizing that on their own as opposed to you having to point that out to them?
Oh, this is a really hard conversation that I have to
No,
have
no,
on a
no.
regular
Let's
basis.
break some eggs and name names.
Well, I've never been shy about that. I'm surprised I haven't been booted out of CEOs' offices, dozens of times. But it's usually because they're in some form of denial about the customer experience. So they know that there are issues inside. They don't necessarily know what's causing the issues. They don't know the magnitude of the issues. It just their gut starts to feel like something's off. But their leaders are like, "No, I think we're probably fine." And what they're in denial about is that that experience has changed. So every customer complaint or employee that is frustrated is a one off. They minimize it. That customer, their expectations are ridiculous. And so they're really muting those insights that they could be getting because they don't want to realize the reality. Because again, these are companies that were born out of a desire to be customer centric.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's not the case
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, again, I think that's part of the reason why have enjoyed reading some stuff you've put out is because when you talk about it plugging revenue leaks and stymieing growth, that's when I think they start to listen. So,
Hmm.
uh, what are some of the things that people need to at least look for from a high level? What are some of the top points you point out to them?
Yeah, so one of the number one issues that we see is that you're relying on heroics to deliver great experiences. So it's the people who've been around, who know how to get things done, and are constantly in firefighting mode.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an efficient use of their time. You need to look at how do you improve their productivity and focus them on profit enhancing activities by solving the root of whatever that, whether it's a lack of technology, a lack of process, whatnot, by addressing that once and for all. It is so expensive to apply these resources, these people, to repeatedly solving the same problem over and over. And not only is it expensive just to do that, you're likely losing customers because they don't like experiencing the same issues over and over. And they might put up with it once or twice, but eventually they're going to leave.
Obviously, I think one of the things that's going to consume everybody's mind, though, and I'm very interested at this point, with all the pandemic concerns around COVID and where we are today and where we come out of it later. I do think this may be, even from an evergreen standpoint, how we look at what CX will do, should do, might do, won't do, how it will change as part of the recovery during COVID-19 and how companies deal with it. I mean, a lot of them today are just trying to figure out, can they keep their doors open? But
Mhm.
what's your opinion on the opportunity that businesses today have on being able to provide a better experience? But I'm not necessarily talking about like when Apple shuts its doors. Um, but I think about all the different types of emails that have gone out where everybody sent their, we're protecting you. We're washing our hands more. We
Mhm.
observe all the CDC guidelines, and I think it just sounds like uh, BS that came from a communications department on top of a consultant adding some buzzwords to your points earlier, and it does nothing to help the customer experience. I've seen very few that really resonated with me, and I'm just kind of curious, if how do you see the opportunities that we can uncover as as we emerge out of COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic, and where companies can re-engage back with their customers and provide better experiences.
Yeah, so this is probably going to sound obvious, but the first part is that the authenticity behind a brand and its leadership, the values of a company and its culture are in the spotlight. So if those aren't true and deep to the core of who your company is, it's going to become so apparently clear, like you're seeing in some of the emails where it's, they're kind of phoning in a response because they feel like they have to.
Hmm.
But the opportunity, and I've seen a few
Or it's
companies
copied
do.
from somebody else.
Oh gosh. I mean, I think I've gotten the same, we're going to increase our cleaning, dot, dot,
Yeah,
dot.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, thanks for that. And on the other side, though, I'm seeing companies where you really get the sense, or at least I do, that they know their customers and they're thinking, how can I make this time easier for them? What is the thing that we can do? And a couple of the examples that I'll give that I just seen in the last couple of days. One, U-Haul. U-Haul is giving free 30-day storage for college students who are displaced.
Yeah.
They don't have a place to go, which is a great way of saying, okay, how can we help our customers in this time of need? Now, there's not revenue attached to that, but it's still an opportunity to reinforce your brand, the positive sentiments, etc. One of the other ones I just read this morning, and I was uh, I don't want to say shocked, but very, very happy with, was Grubhub. And they are actually deferring commissions from independently owned restaurants until down the road. And they explain so that they can afford to stay in business and keep their doors open.
Hmm.
And there's several other things that they mentioned they were doing, but they were not self-serving things. We're kind of all in this together. We're going to hunker down and we see the bigger picture of not only the restaurants we work with, but our customers. And so I thought that one was just really classy, thinking about, okay, the people that we use to serve our customers, if we don't help them through this, they're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
And that's not good in the long term. So they're keeping the eye on the longer term, and they know who their audience or their customers are, that
Oh, yeah.
they don't have a lot of money and they can't keep the doors open if they don't have revenue. So I thought that one was really classy. There's a couple of grocery stores that are also opening up early for a certain period of time for senior citizens and disabled people, since they're at highest risk. And those types of things, to me, what they emphasize is people who know their customers, understand their needs, and start getting creative about where can we add value, where can we add more value, where can we solve a need or a problem. And they're flexible, and nimble enough to then follow through on that, there's massive opportunity there because people will not forget. This is where loyalty comes into play. And I'm not a huge person who uses the term loyalty in customer experience because maybe because I'm fickle
Right.
myself.
Sure.
But during times like this, I think people tend to become very loyal because it's you've gone through the trenches or been in the trenches.
One of the things, a couple of them that I've noticed recently that I just thought were interesting is to get back to the experience of flying. Flying has been absolutely horrible when you think about some of the major airlines and the stories that have hit the world news, and really just the idea of the cleanliness of airlines. As a speaker, I'm on the road a fair amount and I travel, and I got to sit in the plane, and when I get on the plane, I've got a bottle of Lysol that I sprayed my seat with, then I Clorox wipe everything, then I wipe the tray tables and the vents and the windows and everything else, then I wash my hands or use wet wipes, and then I use hand sanitizer. I'd use soap and water at the seat if I could, but I read their emails where they talk about cleaning their planes to make certain that I'm safe. And I'm thinking, there's not anybody. I mean, if anything, the airlines ought to be thanking every passenger, because this will be the first time in 30 years that most of those jets have even been remotely clean, because everybody sitting in every seat is cleaning
Yeah.
them. But then they put out a response. For the most part, that just seems disingenuous. Now, I will say, though, that I have noticed a remarkable difference with hotels and airlines that I had to call when I had to cancel speaking, or when speaking engagements were canceled. I noticed a remarkable, much better personality across the board from the people that were on the customer service lines when you called into a hotel or an airline that where you couldn't cancel online, and just the way you could sort of feel their empathy. And I don't think the change was necessarily in how I measured them and their
Mm-mm.
response, because I didn't have anything negative to say necessarily going into it, but I was so pleased to see people that were under immense pressure in an industry that's really going to get hammered in 2020, how much better they've gotten. And that made me sit back and think about how they're going to gain my business back long term because of it. But
Mm-hmm.
there's some that, I mean, I got one from a major book retailer who sent just the most ridiculous email without anything to talk about cleaning. At the same point, it said they were, we were all living in turbulent times together, and our booksellers are your neighbors, your friends, and your family. Your stories are
Oh,
our stories,
yes.
and we know how resilient our communities are. And I'm thinking, did they just see this as some sort of stupid branded opportunity? I don't know that there is a perfect playbook for this. We're all trying to get through this together, but the ones that hit home runs seem to hit grand slams, and the ones that don't seem to strike out in one pitch, not three. And I'm finding this experience that we're going through a remarkable opportunity for many to arise in a much better place than they've been in for years.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, I've seen it too. And I think that's where you're going to start to see really the companies that talk about customer experience and the customers or and the companies where that is so core to their values. They are a people first, profits will follow mindset, just like a growth mindset versus a fixed. It's people first, profits will follow. And so many companies, they talk, and yet anytime the rubber meets the road, they're the first ones who are like, but our current profitability targets, it's like, no, your current profitability targets went out the window with this. Now you still need to keep an eye on profitability, but your current targets are out the window. You need to focus on being a human, part of humanity, the solution, etc. And I saw the same thing with airlines. Actually, they hadn't recently accrued a lot of my goodwill, although one of the airlines I've become more of a fan of. But yeah, I sat on the phone for 3.5 hours to cancel a ticket, and I was having a little chat with myself. Okay, Jessica, no matter how this person shows up, we need to be kind and grateful. They have a horrible job right now. And it was like your experience, it was very pleasant. Now, after the fact, I'm not sure my flight actually got canceled because instead of a cancellation, I got my receipt resent to
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, but on the flip side, and this won't make me popular with anyone, I think one of the things that we're going to start to see change, and if this goes on for a prolonged period of time, is that people hold customers more accountable for treating their staff respectfully, assuming that their staff isn't doing a horrible job, but being a respectful human being and some degree of reasonableness will come back into this relationship with customers where, and I'll use the airlines as an example. And again, I'm probably not going to make friends on this, but we've gotten to the point where we expect the airline's going to refund me, even though I'm the one that chose to buy a non-refundable ticket.
Sure.
And we expect that from them, and it'll bankrupt them, but we still expect it. And some degree of reasonableness needs to come back into that. Now, I don't know how likely that'll be if this doesn't last a long time, but if it does, I think we'll see people realizing, maybe on the small business scale first, that you can't have everything just because they're a big company unless you want them all to shut down.
Sure. Yeah. And as the recovery takes off, when it does, I'm really interested to see how much of CX will be pulled back because every dollar will have to go into growth. And I'm a growth focused person. That's a big chunk of my career and where I do it. But I do wonder how many of those growth focused businesses are going to do it just with advertising, or are they going to do it with a focus on growing it through customer experience and the better practices that we know that they've done so poorly over the last several decades. And so I think that's going to be an interesting place that we're going to find ourselves in as we see companies that have struggled to stay open now be just hard charged to grow to stay alive.
Yeah, and my hope is actually that we see the smart companies, the forward thinking companies, not necessarily that they're going to invest a ton more in these digital transformations that re-envision customer experience, but they're focused on the expense reduction aspects and the avoidance costs
Mm-hmm.
that providing a better CX creates. If you provide me a good experience to begin with, I'm not going to call you 4 more times.
Right. Yeah.
There's
Good
and there's a
point.
there's a stat somewhere out there, I don't know from where, but that I think it's a third of customer contacts are unnecessary based on if you did it right the first time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money that you're just letting leak out the door. And so I'm really hopeful that we will see companies improve customer experience, if for nothing other than expense reduction and avoiding expenses, etc.
True. As we go through this pandemic, what are the things that you tell companies that they've got to focus on today? These are things they can't let go even during the pandemic, but marching forward that they have to have in order to grow their business back to where it was or greater prior to COVID-19.
Yeah, so the couple of things that I would tell any company is, one, and this is so obvious, but we see it all the time, is remember with every communication and every decision the context, the social,
Yes.
political, economic context. And if you are an authentic person and you pause and think through your message, you're more likely than not going to make the right decision, but bounce it off of someone. That's the first. The other is prioritize your employees, their health, their well-being, above everything else. I mean, above the customer, everything. Your people, and taking genuine care of them, having concern for them, really having a way for them to express or a safe place to discuss fear and anxiety. These are all huge, and you have got to make that priority number one. And then in terms of your customers, start asking the question, where can we add more value? Where do they need us more than they ever did before? What can we do to make this easier for them? And asking all those questions, if you get creative, and if you are innovative and pull your people into this, your people are very creative and innovative. You've got, potentially tens, hundreds, thousands of people. Harness that and think about how you can do that and then act. But above all else, get on the same page with your leadership team and your people. You've got to align around what you're going to do. And a part of that is you're going to have to say no more. That's number one. That's in any downturn crisis, you have to say no more often. So if you're not used to saying no, practice.
Yeah, nobody is asking right now, how can we add more value? Which is something I wish every business did all the time, but nobody's asking that right now. They're simply saying, here's our policy on COVID. Wash your hands more. We care about you. Blah blah blah. It's that stuff. Nobody is really trying to re-earn my business right now, and it's so pivotal because the way consumers shifting will continue to pull back because it's going to affect everybody's wallets. This is a
Hmm.
real opportunity for companies to try to earn back mine, yours, and everybody's value today, where we want to spend our dollars when as we come out of this.
Yes, absolutely. And when you say no more often, what you're doing is then creating the opportunity to say yes better. And by that, I mean you can say yes and actually follow through with the focus, the
Yeah.
resources, and attention to deliver something in an improved way, a different way, a more flexible way, whatever that needs to be. But if you're focused or scattered, or like some companies, you just have a bunch of grassroots projects that are, sucking resources away without anybody paying attention, that'll kill you so fast. I mean, Borders is a great example. I mean, they were top notch customer experience, but they took their eye off profitability during the last downturn in '07, and that'll kill you every time. You have got to prioritize, focus, and say yes and follow through. Say yes to less things and follow through.
Jessica, you're on a Shark's perspective with a guy nicknamed Shark. You're near the beaches of San Diego. So I've got to ask, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Well, I've never met one in person,
Really?
but I have not. I have not. Well, maybe through an aquarium, thick plated
Okay, there
glass.
you go. That
But
counts.
but being being in San Diego in this time of year, I would say the leopard shark, just because they are prolific. Is that the right word? I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, in the waters close to shore, and you can actually evidently, swim, snorkel,
Sure.
whatnot, because they don't bite. I have not done that, although it would be on my list of things I'd be open to considering.
All right. Good answer. Well, Jessica, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the five most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I am ready.
All right. Number one, customer service or marketing?
Well, I would say it depends on where you are in the growth curve for your company, but customer service. You got to do it right. I mean, marketing will get you a lot, but that's grow fast and then implode.
Number two, a really tough question, Captain Crunch or Fruit Loops?
Oh, well, I would say Captain Crunch I prefer, and one of the fast food restaurants like 15 years ago had a Captain Crunch shake, like vanilla milkshake, and it was
Interesting.
divine, which I shouldn't be admitting that, but it was amazing. And Fruit Loops, I've got some nice childhood memories, but the flavor really leaves something to be desired for me.
Well, I'm trying to start a rumor that there's pandemic buying on Fruit Loops. So, it's toilet paper and hand sanitizer and everything else. But I think if I repeat this enough, that Fruit Loops will become the next item that people panic about. I just want to see if see if that's true. Well, I know you spent half your life in Arizona, but you live in San Diego now. So I've got to ask you, number three, beaches or the desert?
Well, since I'm pretty much sold everything that I had, or at least three-fourths of it, and up and moved to live by the beach, I would have to say the beaches. I made that change. It's been a little over 10 years. Best thing I ever did. However, there is no sunset like a desert sunset. I mean,
Really?
it is not even close. I mean, we have nice sunsets here on sunny days, but they're usually, every once in a while we'll have a dynamite one. That's
Nice.
just run of the mill in Arizona. They are just breathtaking all of the time. And for some sciency reason, that's common in deserts. Nobody's going to hire me for science, but that's the rumor of what I hear. But they are dynamite.
Nice. All right, number four, Jay Bear or Blake Morgan.
Oh gosh. You chose two people who I agree with, probably 60% of the time. Oh gosh. I would probably usually say Jay, but I'm going to say Blake because I actually read something Jay said the other day and I was like, I don't think so. So I'm going to have to go with Blake today, but most other days it would have been Jay.
Yeah, they're both great, and
Hmm.
Blake's got the newest book. How about we'll go with that? Uh,
Oh, there we go.
but
Yes,
at least
absolutely.
they're both really heavily focused on the customer, and that's
A
I'm
hundred percent.
glad they are. Number five, and the most important question you're going to be asked today
Yep.
is biscuits or cornbread.
Oh gosh. Well, it's probably because one of the things I've been craving recently in Arizona, there is a place that makes cornbread that actually has like little pieces of corn in it and green
Nice,
chilies,
nice.
roasted green chilies. So just because that's top of mind, it is amazing, and I'm gonna need you to send me some as soon as this wraps
That
because it is
works.
delicious.
So, Jessica, where can people find out more about you, the company, keep up with what you're doing in thought leadership and customer experience and more?
Yeah, so you can check out our website, magneticexperiences.com, or I am very active on social media. Most of that is centered on LinkedIn, and it's Jessica J. Noble, Noble, or our company page, but that's where we are, and we're pretty active out there. So come say hi.
Definitely. And thank you, Jessica, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective. So there was my conversation with Jessica Noble, the founder and CEO of Magnetic Experiences, whose focus is on helping leaders boost profitability while elevating experiences for customers and employees. Let's take a look at three key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, many decent-sized companies are addressing customer experience more formally than ever before. But despite the hours of meetings that so many teams have, the experience is still bad for a lot of brands. You can write up findings and have lots of internal meetings, but writing up a bunch of content about the positive experience, for example, isn't going to help you connect to the customer. Sometimes, though, as hard as you try, it requires having a hammer, at least metaphorically speaking, and one that can empower you to make things happen. But unless the CEO or CFO hands you Thor's Mjolnir itself, well, good luck in those siloed internal meetings. But how do you truly get them to take action and empower you to make change within a brand? It's very often that you need to translate what bad customer experience means to the bottom line. And the measurement has to go way beyond looking at the staple metric, that holy NPS score. So now is the time to provide a much better experience. Practice transparency. Be thoughtfully aggressive in your approach. Ask the question, where do your customers need you more than ever before? Second, how many times have you seen a business get started because an entrepreneur thinks that they can provide a better experience than someone else or some other brand, but then their business grows and some things that made them so successful when small later become leaks that have sprung up and need to be plugged? They sacrifice too often the experience when trying to grow, and the next thing you know is that the experiences have gotten worse over time with processes, technologies, and often misguided focus. I mean, where's the little Dutch boy when you need him to plug all those leaks? Many of those leaders are in denial about their experience, and then they marginalize what might be holding them back, or they overemphasize the heroics. But she brings up another great point. We talk about marketing jargon a lot, like customer experience and journey maps and NPS scores, but that's not vernacular that a lot of small and mid-sized companies use day to day, so it can fall on deaf ears, and a lot that doesn't translate to revenue. But what you can help focus on that they will hear is using CX to boost profitability and how more profits are a result of better experience and not the other way around. There quite simply should be more focus on profit-enhancing activities that focus on the customer. That will quite often plug a lot of those leaks that you made with the processes, your jumbled tech stacks, and teams focus often not enough on your customers. Third, so how do we look at customer experience with COVID-19 affecting the world? Should we expect more from brands? Less? I mean, think about how many emails you received from companies that had corporate speak with how much they care about you and their employees, and you should wash your hands according to CDC guidelines. Most of them look like they were copied off of each other. You take the logos off of most of them, and they look like they came from some generic template. But then again, think about how customer service teams acted when you spoke with someone, when you had to cancel a flight or hotel reservation. At least for me, I found that the experience was so much better than normal. You could hear in some of their voices a feeling like, a little bit of fear, and we're all in this together and we're trying. Maybe both of us had a better experience. So emails and automation bad, customer service teams good. But there's such an opportunity to sustain a better experience across the board. It's a remarkable opportunity for companies who talk about it and those who have it as a core to their values to demonstrate a better experience. And to all the people that had to put up with my calls, well, God bless you. Across the board, be authentic and be real. Now's the time to show you really care. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. We'll get through this. And if you're like me, you just enjoy the experience of being a shark. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.